We good? Yes. I actually just want to mention that I remember when I was a very young attendee in Chaim Lotan's department, struggling away with a 10 French trying to drag thrombi out. I think it was 2002, 2003, being terribly frustrated with the approach. So I guess that sets the stage, and I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to tell you about Althea Medical's pulmonary embolectomy solution, which we've called the friendly giant because it's larger, it's stronger, and hopefully it's more compliant. So these are my conflicts. So I'm not going to repeat everything everybody else has said. What I am going to say is that when we see a large thrombus sitting in the pulmonary artery, the first line of action is almost always aspiration. What are the challenges of aspiration? As the previous speaker mentioned, size is a critical issue. You want to get more out. We like a larger catheter with larger diameter that's going to be able to extract larger volume of thrombus. However, with that increased size, we almost always run into limited flexibility, navigation difficulties. We end up putting this huge, as they call garden hose. I call it a regular catheter because we're a structuralist, so those are the size of the catheters we're using anyway. But we're putting these catheters, running them through an impaired right ventricle that's struggling as it is. We're often pinning and splinting that ventricle, holding onto the pulmonary leaflets, onto the tricuspid leaflets, and you very commonly get hemodynamic embarrassment as a result. We're getting some collapsibility and a tendency to kink as we're taking those terribly difficult curves with a larger catheter that's trying to get a smaller and thinner vessel, catheter wall. That's with regard to aspiration, but those large catheters are not going to go down distally to the small vessels. We need a mechanical removal system, and very often they're inefficient, particularly with adherent thrombus that can't be aspirated. So you end up with a trade-off. Do I go for something that's stiffer, that's going to be more aggressive, or is that going to interfere and end up being traumatic to the vessel? So I want something that's going to be a little bit more flexible and still be effective in removal. So the first step of the Althea approach is to combine the efficiency of a large bore thrombectomy with an easy-to-use delivery method. So we're moving to 26 French. 26 French gives you an increased calculated flow rate by 42% compared to the commercial 24 French aspiration catheter that exists today. And the beauty of this is this novel catheter technology. It's got a distal section that's ultra flexible, able to do almost anything, and it's kink resistant. When we took this catheter and we compared it to a 24 French commercially available catheter, we showed, and we assessed the resistance in a sample, we showed that the resistance of this novel catheter is 3 times lower than the on-market device. Then further, we took it and we did a flexibility or kink test, and the 24 French system was able to pass 40 millimeter radius without any trouble. At 30 millimeter, it kinked. The Althea device can go to 20 millimeters without any kink. In terms of navigation, unfortunately the dilator is not radio opaque, so you can't see it. I haven't moved this without a dilator, but this is in a pig model where the device moves beautifully, tracks nicely down the wire, going very distally. And what the nicest thing about it is actually you can see the movement of the catheter. Incredibly compliant, moving with the vessel, moving with the cardiac structures. And on the right side, you can see it aspirating, still with that beautiful movement of the proximal catheter. Mechanical capture and retrieval, we're using the aspiration as a base, and then we've got an over-the-wire system that's benefits our small crossing profile of 8 French, go distal to the thrombus, and then we have a dial-in size. You want it at 8 millimeters, 8 millimeters. You want 14 millimeters, 14 millimeters in the back handle, dial it in, and then you can begin to rotate. By rotating it, you can engage with distal thrombi or strongly adherent thrombi in order to extract them back to the aspiration catheter. This is a model that's a very specific model that uses vacuum retention of the thrombus at the distal portion. You can see the larger aspiration catheter with the distal system going, the mechanical system going in, rotates round, entangles and entraps the thrombus, and then is able to retract and pull back towards the aspiration catheter, and you can see it pulling against the vacuum system back at the distal end. In the animal model, we can see each one of those legs of this rotating system has got markers on it. We're able to rotate it into the thrombus and retract it back to that aspiration system, and then move it back through the aspiration system on the right. You can see it engaged into the catheter and retrieved back all at 26 French. So we're moving towards Europe for a first-in-man trial, and hopefully that will progress relatively quickly. There's been significant engagement with the FDA, moving towards a 510(k) submission with supporting clinical data, and there's been agreement achieved with the FDA about proposed bench test plan and animal study synopsis and the clinical synopsis. And with that, I'd actually like to say thanks to a great team of developers and innovators that have hopefully made this a friendlier procedure both for the operators and for the unfortunate patient with pulmonary embolism.